All right. We are live. What's up, everybody on LinkedIn and YouTube? We're live for another live recording of the Managing Partners podcast. I'm joined with a special guest today out of Colorado. Ryan, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
So let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little personal. I know some of your background already. And, tie that into how you got, started your firm and what you guys focus on.
Yeah. So you and I were talking before the show, the connection with Virginia. I grew up on the Front Range in Colorado, wanted to play baseball, wanted to be a professional baseball player, ended up at University of Virginia on a baseball scholarship, and then ultimately came back home. I realized very quickly once I was playing like Mark Teixeira and some of these other guys that I was a pretty mediocre baseball player. And so I ended up coming back home to Colorado. And I am an attorney up in Aspen, Colorado, and we have several offices throughout the mountain region. We just opened a office in Denver and Boulder, and it's been quite a journey. I didn't expect when I left home to get closer to you in Virginia to be here where I am now, but that's life, right?
Well, we're virtual now, so you never know who you're going to run into. But I really enjoy having guests on that are from different areas and learning more about that. But it's always really cool too when you have some connection or you've been somewhere that they've been or whatever. So yeah, cool to see that you spent some time in Virginia. I can see why you love it there. We obviously love it here too. So, yeah, I was saying I was just up at University of Virginia, I think last weekend. So go Hokies though. For everyone tuning in too, don't forget to ask any questions. If you have a question for Ryan about some of the practice areas that he covers, or anything how he runs his business. So we'll get into some more of that. So Ryan, more about your firm, just quickly. I know you cover quite a few different practice areas, but what do you guys specialize in? What are you known for?
So I always introduce myself as the lawyer that you never want to call because my firm deals with personal disputes. So people are usually looking at going to jail, they're hurt, or they're going through a divorce. So we do criminal defense, personal injury, and divorce. We started out based primarily in mountain resort communities. My partner, Amy, she actually went through a divorce herself fairly recently. So she's moved back to Denver, where she is originally from. And that was one of the reasons that we, opened an office there. I previously had partnered up with two guys when I left my firm, where I kind of cut my teeth and learned how to practice law, private practice. And those two guys were doing HOA, real estate, transactional work, and it just wasn't a good fit. There was no real business synergy. So we specialize in personal disputes, and that's worked out well for us because the bigger firms up here, they're doing real estate. Real estate's a huge driver of at least in the mountains. And so the civil litigation, the construction disputes, those sorts of things, we don't play in that sandbox, which is a great, referral opportunity. We send those that work out, and then in turn, we're kind of the go-to for the nitty gritty or the down and dirty work that we do.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's good. You know where you want to be. You're kind of staying in your lane, and that's a great thing to have. I definitely see a lot of firms where they do everything. And I can see maybe as you grow, you bring in a certain partner and they have a certain additional skill or knowledge of a different practice area. But it seems like a lot of firms just bolt on as much as they can.
And I think Yeah, for us, we learned through trial and error. I mean, I took on a big personal injury case, and we're working on a contingent fee basis. We're putting in $60,000 in experts that we may or may not collect. And my partners that were doing real estate transactions, it was completely foreign to them. Their risk tolerance was not in that, it just, there wasn't a real good alignment, and we're still good friends. We still send each other work, but we just realized that it just wasn't going to be a good fit. And so there's been some good kind of relationship, for better or for worse, for our clients, because, someone can pick up a criminal case, dispute with their significant other, and then that will kind of lead into a divorce. So there's an overlap there. And then the personal injury, we're trial lawyers, and so that is just the key to the common thread for all of us.
Excellent. But yeah, I love that you guys have just kind of focused on where you want to be and what's working for you, and where you feel you can do the best work. So kudos on that. So leading into some of you kind of hinted there with a few things with, the personal stuff you deal with, and, people don't want to be making that call. But what are some of the challenges your clients are really faced with before they make that call? What things are are they going through basically before they give that call to you?
Yeah, I think emotionally they're really reluctant. They don't want to call us. And so the getting over that emotional hurdle, in particular on the family law, the divorces, no one wants to go through a divorce, right? And no one wants to be hurt by another skier or another auto accident. But so it's getting their head around, is this really happening to me? In that uncertainty, what do I do? People, when they're arrested and they're sitting in jail, they kind of will at that point say, I need to call a lawyer. But it's not the emotional uncertainty and just grappling with what they are going through. That is probably the biggest issue. And we recognize that and try to empathize with our clients and really hear their story. And so we've set up various systems to ensure that happens, because everyone wants to tell us their story, whether some of the emotional aspects are relevant to their case is, but they just have to tell us that, and they want to be heard and feel supported in what is one of, if not the most difficult period in their life.
Yeah, I could definitely see in that, and luckily for myself, I haven't had to go through that, but I could see it be very challenging and hard to even, who do you call? Who do you trust? Do you even want to tell anybody about the situation you're in? So,
absolutely. And when people are dealing with their kids, the most important thing for them, I don't know about you, Kevin, I've got a little girl that turned 7 yesterday and a 4-year-old, and I'm happily married. But when your family is at risk, or you're looking at an injury that's going to change your life, you want to make sure that you have the best possible person to ensure that you don't go to jail, or that you receive justice and compensation, or to make sure that you're going to see your kids next week and going forward.
Yeah, very important. Not something you want to just see a billboard and be like, let me call that guy. There's got to be some way that, you got to learn. I'd have to learn a lot more and have a lot more validation before I would do that. And I would probably exhaust my friends and advisors for referrals as well. So you got to be able to back it up. Oh yeah, I have 2 kids myself, happily married, and hope I won't be calling anyone like you anytime soon for that type of stuff. But this is a kind of I'll pluck one thing out of what you said too, which I thought was interesting because of where you are, as you mentioned, skiers. So obviously being near the slopes and things like that. So is that something you guys see quite a bit of, and that you actually market for?
Absolutely. We are one of the only firms. We have offices. As you're interviewing me here, there's a ski boot shop across the plaza. I'm at the base of Aspen Highlands. And so you can see actually this, we've got skis or a picture of me heli skiing. But we're at the base. I see skiers out my window every single day in the winter. And frequently, it's probably every other day, we see an ambulance taking somebody off. And so we are avid skiers. I ski during the lunch break, get probably 60, 80 days in, depending on the year and kind of other issues. We have another office over in Edwards, which is right at the base of Beaver Creek. So we frequently take on big ski cases. We have one currently going on. It's been in the Aspen newspapers, and we know the ins and outs where cases where ski accidents are occurring, and we really do specialize in that because we are skiers ourselves, and we know the issues. And Denver, I grew up on the Front Range, but to really understand and walk into a jury, into a courthouse and look at the jury and talk about this run, or someone consuming alcohol at a particular restaurant, which can lead to accidents. That's something that I think we have a distinct competitive advantage over anyone that we go up against.
That's very interesting. So I'm a snowboarder myself, so but I don't get to go that often. I have to travel 5 hours to go. But so I can see why you guys would have a huge advantage over that. And but that's something
Yeah,
unique.
and Kevin, just imagine you go out for a ski vacation and you've taken time off of work. You're there with your family. We have a client out in North Carolina, and he visited Steamboat, and his little 5-year-old boy was just skiing along in a ski lesson, and out of control skier just clipped him and ruined the family vacation. And these injuries can be very significant when you're talking about people who sometimes are high or drunk, and they hit somebody because they're going 40, 50 miles an hour. You can cause some major damage, and it can be life-changing. And so to kind of help people go through that, for you, that just imagine how that would feel. And so that is, it is a pretty big part of our personal injury practice.
No, I mean, that's terrible. And I've seen people out of control, or, either they don't know what they're doing, or they're just acting, stupid. But a question though with that, just are there people that get hurt on their own and that try to go after the resort, or is that even a case, or is it something that they're kind of covered for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So under the Colorado Skier Safety Act, generally speaking, the resorts are pretty insulated from those claims. There was a well-known case over in Vail where a young teenage boy, slipped into an area that it was closed, and he was killed in an avalanche. And there was a claim that they tried to make against the ski resort, and it didn't go forward. So for us, we take cases where we know the identity of the other skier. There's at fault. So someone, if you were snowboarding down at Wintergreen or over here in Aspen, and you're just stopped there, or you're skiing along and someone clips you from behind, and we know, so the ski patrol would stop, come and take the name. And then we have to make sure that the other person has homeowners insurance or owns a home, or in Aspen, and it's not uncommon for someone to be independently wealthy. But usually the claim is against the homeowners insurance. But we had an Australian doctor that hit our client, was just standing there. The doctor slipped on some ice, and his travel insurance covered it. So, we ended up settling that case for $400,000. And because the injuries were significant. So usually it's going after some sort of insurance carrier, just similar to having an auto insurance policy. That's where the source of funds are coming from.
Interesting. So I assume, just like an auto accident, it's a lot to do with what happened on the scene, what those people said. If I was the one hurt and I said, "Hey, I'm fine. I don't need medical attention," that all could be against me and things like that. I would assume a very similar
Absolutely.
type of case.
There's a high profile case that we have where the other side said, they weren't drinking, and drinking can result in punitive damages when there is, someone's partying and they get out of control. But the guy just left our client just laying there and just tried to run away, and he's just denied responsibility. And so you get into these various issues as who's the downhill skier. And that's where, us being avid skiers, we have the acumen. We also have the familiarity to know where various, people are located, and how we can prove that someone is at fault.
Yeah, that definitely helps. Versus if you were a bunch of lawyers, stuffy lawyers that were like, yeah, we don't ski at all. So you probably, the slopes, the everything. So
Indeed, it's our
yeah.
background, or it's a backyard.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, let's get into some more interesting stuff with your business, and instead of kind of the practice areas. But big question is, how do you currently get clients?
So the two main sources of where we get clients, one are from referrals from other attorneys. We get referrals from, like I said, construction attorneys, real estate attorneys. That is we're kind of the go-to for, in particular, in Aspen and Eagle County, for criminal cases, family matters. There'll be some overlap with some of the firms that have domestic practices, but there's frequently conflicts of interest. So other domestic attorneys will refer to us. And then we have a podcast. We're very active. Our firm is very active on social media. So we're providing content. But the main driver for the podcast is going to be Divorce at Altitude, which is our podcast in Colorado. We do get content or referrals based on that, because we're the only family law firm that does a podcast. So that has been helpful for us, and we've tried out different tactics with marketing, Google ads, and the like, but we've really kind of honed in on the social media and podcasting to augment our referral base.
That's awesome. And we talked about that a little bit pre-show. So I love talking about podcasts while we're on a podcast. So it's and anyone watching or tuning in now or later, managing partner. You got to think about, and I saw Neil Patel. If you don't know who Neil Patel is, you can Google him, but huge digital marketer. And he said something recently that, there's billions of websites out there. So yeah, you have a website for your firm. I have a website for my agency. But there's not even barely millions, I think, of podcasts. So you think about the difference in those numbers. It's pretty massive. So still a huge opportunity for the podcasting market and to stand out. And you would think a lawyer might say, well, who's going to listen to a podcast about the law or divorce or whatever? And that's the cool thing. It's niche, and there are people looking for that, and people trying to especially for like a divorce. I think there's some time leading up to it. There's a lot of research, a research phase, discovery phase. You don't even know if it's going to happen. What are you going to do? How you lead up to it. So I think it's great what you guys are doing with that. And I would encourage anyone, no matter what you do, to start a podcast. It's going to help you get better at it. It's get you better at just speaking about what you do. And then I think it helps retain what we learn. Because a lot of times I'm talking about my business or what we've learned and what we've done, and then I talk about it, and it helps me actually retain that and remember it more than if I just did it and had experience. So
yeah, so Kevin, there's several points there that I want to that really resonated with me, and that is that our podcast, it allows us to tell stories and to connect with our clients, and there'll be various things that we will talk about So, for example, my partner's divorce, or my kids, for example, that I'm not going to be able to do in the same kind of manner in a blog post or some sort of article that is going to be posted. It also allows us to network with other professionals. We bring in guests, and we allows us an opportunity pre-show. Kevin, you and I talked about Virginia Beach and UVA baseball. That's a conversation that would not happen if we're just going over email, or not in the same way. But we get the ability to post on our YouTube, on our website, and so when they want to learn more about us, they get a good idea, because we do a video and then we also do the audio. But it creates this evergreen content that we can go to an existing client and say, hey, you asked about parental relocation, or a high asset divorce, or those kinds of issues, and we can send them the little segment about that. And it's really helpful. It makes us a lot more efficient. But at the same time, I'm having to dive in and make sure I'm explaining it, and it makes me a better lawyer, because I go through the transcripts and I notice the the various verbal tics that I have. And so from a public speaking standpoint, it makes me better, in particular because some of my trials I'm still doing via WebEx or Zoom. So I make sure that my background and my lighting and all those various things that really does matter, in a judicial setting, that I'm going to be working on with the podcast.
Yeah, no, I like everything you had to say there. I totally agree with you. You get that connection. Do you guys do it in video format as well, or just audio?
We do. So we post it on YouTube, and then we post it in the audio, but we create a transcript. So we get a transcript and we post that on our website. And we found that, certainly you can blah, blah, blah a lot faster than typing. So when I'm speaking about child custody, I'm creating that content that is in written form that I can then post on our website. So we get kind of the back end SEO, and I'm not an SEO expert, but then we also leverage that. We can send it out in a newsletter to family law attorneys, where if it's really technical. So we just recently had an expert talk about breaking down a parenting evaluation or a custody evaluation. That's really focused on other family law lawyers. So we send that out to them. It helps them. And then it also reminds them that, so we stay top of mind for when they have, an issue that they can refer to us. But then we have other client interviews, people talking about going through a divorce. That's not really going to, matter too much to a divorce attorney, because they've heard that story so many times. But for other people going through a divorce, it's very helpful for them to feel like they're not alone. So we have a separate email list that we'll send out to our former clients, again, staying top of mind, but then it's also there for existing clients or potential clients.
So the key takeaway there, everyone listening for sure, is repurpose. So exactly what Ryan was just saying, and that's something that we practice heavily at my firm at Array Digital, is repurposing. So, we used to write an article and spend a ton of time and put the article up, and that would be it. And we'd hope we'd draw some people in and, write an article about, digital marketing or something. But now, man, we're going live right now. This will be on YouTube and LinkedIn. This audio will go up on all the podcast platforms. The video will go on our website, and you'll have your own page just for you, which will have information about you, link to your website, and have the video. And then we can transcribe this. It can become a blog article, and then this will be sliced up into a dozen social media stories and posts. And so, yeah, one topic about child custody, you could have maybe 5-6 social posts that take just a piece of it and slice it up into little pieces that people can digest. And so there's endless possibilities. And it takes just as long as for you to just talk, which is very easy compared to if I said, hey, Ryan, man, write me a 3-page article in the next half hour on child custody.
And it works for us. I mean, I mean, we're not the nerdy people that just sit in an office and write stuff. We interact with our clients. We're trial lawyers, so we're having to put on the appearances do matter. So it was just we're a younger firm. So for us, I mean, we're the only firm that's doing this right now in Colorado. So when people are trying to figure out whether or not they should hire us over somebody else, it's something that it provides us a distinct advantage. So we're learning. It's been a fun learning experience, and yeah, looking forward to continuing to get better and better at it.
Well, again, what you're doing is excellent, and you're in early, so that's gonna you're gonna get better at it, and now you're gonna be established in it, and others are gonna be trying to keep up, and they're gonna be trying to implement the same thing, and I think that's the problem too, is that you'll see firms that'll be like, well, let's do exactly what they're doing versus like stepping back and saying, hey, let's be ourselves. Let's do what works for us. And it could still be a podcast, but what's different about them? What makes them different? And you see lawyers that, well, I'm just going to get a motorcycle and I'm a motorcycle accident lawyer, and I want to show that I ride a motorcycle, even though they probably don't. Versus you guys, you really ski. That's something you really love to do, and you do, and you have experience with it, and it happens to translate into your what you do and your expertise. So
yeah, and I think for us, there's two things. One is we're experienced enough where we know what we're talking about, but people will sometimes prejudge us because they're like, you're young. But then once they hear us talk in an authoritative manner, it allows us to be a thought leader in that space. But also, I mean, especially in personal injury and divorce, I mean, for all three of our practice areas, there's every lawyer wants to say, I've got 1,000 years of collective experience. I'm going to fight for you. It's just that. So for us, I mean, every lawyer fights for their client. Like that's just how it's just a starting point for us. Our branding is more of the explorer brand archetype, where we're the kind of explorer, adventuresome, and that resonates with our client base. So the Patagonia, the North Face, we're that kind of brand of a law firm, and it helps us to connect with the right kind of client. We're not the best fit for every single client, but we do really well with the clients that we know that they're going to be a good fit for us. So we have a good idea of who our ideal client is, and that works in Colorado and where we're located. It's not going to work everywhere, but we've really tried to tell that story, our client story, as well as our own, through our podcast, and it just has worked. But we can get better at it. It's taken a lot of thought behind that.
Yeah. Again, you will, and I love your brand, by the way, because I was able to check out your site and check out you, and the fact that you have, I like that you guys have videos for yourself and others, because I'm like, well, I'm going to talk to Ryan, but I never talked to Ryan, so I get to get familiar with you and make sure I know how to say your name and all kinds of good stuff. So it just allows you to build that connection before you actually make the call. So for me, it was less important because I'm just having you as a guest on the podcast. But imagine if I was a potential customer or a client calling, and I'm like, all right, let me watch the video about Ryan. Oh, I feel like I could talk to Ryan and have a conversation with him. And so I think the podcast also accomplishes that. And I don't know how many times I've gotten a client call or prospective client call and say, hey, I've been following you guys for like 2 years, and we've been really wanting to work with you guys, and they're basically ready to go, and we don't even have a clue who they are. So, but they've watched our videos, or they've seen us on LinkedIn or whatever, and they've basically built this like relationship that we didn't really know about. So it's really interesting how that works out. But I think that's really the cool factor when you can accomplish that kind of stuff. And I think the podcast is going to work out just great for you guys. So kudos again for that.
Thank you.
Maybe you can do another podcast about where to ski and where I should go.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, and I guess a couple points on the podcast is that, when you look at the demographics the engagement it's growing just rapidly. People, when you look at Clubhouse or some of these other social platforms, LinkedIn, everyone's going audio, and there's a reason for that. The other aspect is that people generally are fluent, and that is our ideal client base is the high end market. So the podcast really resonates with our ideal client, and that is one of the other reasons that we've looked at that. We're well known as one of the tech based law firms, and so we're kind of ahead of the curve. And the podcast is just part of telling that story and showing our strategic initiatives at play.
Yeah, 100%. And there is some data out there too to support that people that listen to podcasts have a much higher income. I forgot what the actual numbers were, but it's the right audience. It's people you want to be in front of. And so everything is going to either video or audio, pretty much exclusively. I got people on LinkedIn, they'll actually send like a video an audio recording instead of a message. And I thought that was pretty unique. Like, you're going to play it because you don't know what it is until you play it. And then it's like, it could be like, hey, Ryan, this is Kevin. You should come on my podcast, instead of me sending you a message that says it and you just ignore it. So
and one other aspect is, a lot of our videos will put transcripts or captions. So they might be at work and they might be taking a lunch break and they're thinking about filing for divorce. They don't want everyone else to know about it. So we've got the captions. They don't listen to it. They just look at me, moving my mouth, and they get some idea of who I am, but then they really read the words and they're learning. And so we just want to make sure that we're hitting and providing people with how they consume their content. It could be in a podcast. It could be on a walk while they're washing dishes, thinking about, with their spouse out drinking again, or something of that variety. Or it could be on YouTube. It really depends, how they consume their content. So we try to meet them where they are, so that it makes it just as easy as possible for them to find us.
Yeah, 100%. And everyone does different. I try to read books when I can, but I definitely consume more with Audible, just because of my schedule and how I operate. Actually, every time we bring on a new employee in my company, we ask in the interview process, how do you learn best? And they're usually like, what? So first off, if they're not interested in learning, then we may not be interested in them. But we ask them that question because we don't really care how, but do you read books, YouTube, whatever, and everyone's got a different way. And so we make that available to them. Like, if you want to watch videos, we'll get you videos. If you want to read, we'll get you books. Whatever you want to do. So that's great that you guys are doing that in different ways. And depending on, where that customer may be when they're trying to consume that content, and give them the options 100%. It's also good for ADA compliance for your website.
Indeed.
So, yeah. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you having me on. I love what you're doing. Seems like you guys are crushing it. And I'm sure we'll see more from you, because I'll be definitely checking in to see what you guys are up to. For everyone watching now or in the future, what's the best way to connect with you? Obviously, I have your website right here. So if you guys want to check Ryan out and his firm, I'm sure you can connect with him there. But is there a particular social media platform? And if you wouldn't mind, maybe sharing again the podcast name so I can put that in the comments.
Absolutely. So the podcast can be found at divorceataltitude.com. It's also on our website. The various snippets and how we have it structured is there's a little how-to videos on Mondays. So how to file for divorce. And we have longer form interviews with experts generally on Thursdays. And both of them are segregated on our website. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That is my social media platform of choice. So people can find me there. Just think of Kalamaya. That's what, a lot of people in playing baseball throughout the South, I have had my name mispronounced. Every time I came up to bat, it would be, all different iterations of it. But website, and then divorceataltitude.com.
I love calamari, by the way. So that's funny. It's actually a real quick story is, growing up in a small island where I'm from, off Virginia. I worked at a boat dock in high school. So I had jobs all the time, and I would have to cut up squid for fish bait. And it was the worst thing ever. And I was like, I'll never eat this stuff ever. Like I had to like throw away my shirts every night. Like just the smell was crazy. But a few years later, calamari, I think I've tried it for the first time and I love it. So
yeah, when I was a prosecutor, right. When I was a prosecutor, it's because I, was in court, right out of law school, the judge would say, Mr. Calamari. And I'm like a dog. I'll come to anything. And I didn't really notice. Like I said, I've had my name just mispronounced on various PAs just so many different times. I've just kind of tuned it out. And my colleague was sitting at the table and he's like, he nudged me and he was like, you realize the judge has been calling you calamari for like the last 2 months. And I was like, no, because it just kind of goes in one ear, out the other. I'm like a dog. So that's my story about calamari.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, does it matter? You're there to get your job done, and there's no need to debate the judge about what your name is. So, yeah, I think that's fine.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity. Great conversation. Good to connect, and thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Lots of good stuff to share. Anyone listening, write down this stuff. Start a podcast. Get out there and do it. No matter what your practice area is, I think it's gonna be beneficial for you. But yeah, check out what Ryan's done. Check out his podcast. And thanks for tuning in. Again, if anyone's watching needs help with digital marketing or just advice on setting up a podcast, because we do it, be happy to talk to you. Reach out to us at raylaw.com, and we'll see you next time.